What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Big Five Pod, episode number 106. I'm your co-host, Kyle Morello. And next to me in the Broncos beanie, Cope, congratulations on the Broncos breaking their 8-year playoff drought. Jay Stick. I'll let you rant about them for a second. Or not rant, I mean positive words, but I'll let you ramble about them. So I don't even need to know how you are, but I do know how you are. Why don't you tell everybody else?
Yeah, doing great, Kyle. It's fun to watch football again. It's fun to watch football
I
again.
wouldn't know.
Bronco, yeah, and the thing is, I hate to sit up here and be like, oh, it was 8 years because I know the Jets have done almost double that. That's not a shot at you. I'm just, it's not like I've been sitting up here with a shit football team for longer than you have because I haven't. The last time the Broncos made the Super Bowl, made the playoffs, they won the Super Bowl. So hard to complain about that, but we're back. Big game in Buffalo on Sunday. Josh Allen is a juggernaut, so going to be a really tough game. Probably going to be absolutely freezing up there, but they're built for the cold. Bo Nix has been amazing this year. He's accurate. He does not take drive-killing, back-breaking sacks like Russell Wilson did. So that's been nice to see because they're scoring a lot more points because of that. He's mobile. He's accurate. As an older dude, he stepped in and really after week 2 against the Steelers, been pretty damn good. Been pretty damn good. So it took a while. I thought they were going to beat the Chargers. They lost last second to the Bengals, but nice to get a win over the Chiefs. Second teamers beat the crap out of them to the point they took it off TV. And Kyle, we're back in the playoffs. Let's go Broncos. Big game Sunday.
Congratulations. I also have to formally on the podcast congratulate you for our Dynasty Championship. For those of you who do not know, because I don't think we got to mention it last time, maybe we did, I forget. Actually, I think it was during that Monday night game, but Cope and I were facing each other in our Dynasty League with our friends. I was the favorite going in, and I was up 80 points going into Monday Night Football, and he had Juwan Jennings, George Kittle, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Jameson Williams, and I was up 17 points with 3 minutes left, and he ended up pulling that out. I'm still upset about it. I'm not gonna until I win the championship next year, because I still think my roster is the best in the league. I will be upset about it. But congratulations, because your team was very good this year. We were fighting for the 1 seed all year, so uh, as much as it pains me to say, congratulations, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice of you to concede like that. But great win for my team. Jahmyr Gibbs broke the Lions all-time touchdown record this year. And I beat Kyle, by the way, starting Bo Nix because my starting quarterback, Jalen Hurts, was out. So I started Bo Nix and I didn't have Alvin Kamara playing. So I streamed Amir Abdullah for the second straight week
Who I told him to pick up in the semifinal.
and he delivered. He won. Amir Abdullah essentially won me 2 playoff games. So I am forever indebted to Amir Abdullah. But also, I think the nail in the coffin was that you did lose to Bo Nix in the fantasy.
100%. Also, Terry McLaurin scoring 1.5 points on Sunday Night Football when that would have put the game away. He was great this year, though, so I'm going to complain a little bit. But anyway, we're not going to bore you guys with football. I didn't need to say that, though. And of course, congratulate Cope on the Broncos, because once that happens for me as a Jets fan, I will be ecstatic. Don't know when that'll be. But anyway, moving on. Cope, trade that football talk in for a basketball in your hand. So we're going to run the break. We're going to do Cope's quick hitters. Hit me with them. Let's go.
Okay, it's going to be quick. We're just going to do a little suicide here. We'll just go up and back a couple times. So, big news from the NCAA. There's going to continue to be NCAA news. I think we're really close to a groundbreaking thing on revenue sharing here and players being paid in-house by their universities. I think that's on the horizon. So, as this NCAA news starts to trickle in, we'll have it for you. But they're reviewing a rule to give student athletes 5 years of eligibility. Kyle, John Rothstein reported this, I believe it was earlier last week, maybe mid last week. They're going to continue discussions into the new year in the next couple months to give 5 years of eligibility in all sports. In all sports. And I think this is in part due to this is the last season that we have COVID seniors. So I think college basketball has become a better product with older players, with more mature players, more time to develop, of course, more time to get better. And I think that's a bit enticing for the NCAA. And with these student athletes, gives them another year of earning potential. So I think it could be good for everybody. You give these student athletes a year to get a master's degree as well, and to leave school after 5 years with 2 degrees. I like the idea. It's a real shame for people that have already graduated. They're seeing this like, oh, I would have, loved another year. If you get upset first round of the tournament as a senior with a great season, would have loved another shot at it. But I think Kyle, I think there's some real steam to this, and I think it's only a matter of time before this seems like everything in favor of the student athletes is being passed this in this time. So I think this is going to happen, but for right now, the NCAA is taking a look at this, and into the early portion of 2025, they're going to continue to review this. So we will update you as we get more on that. Lastly, Kyle, just a quick player note here. Steven Solano from St. Joe's been absent for quite some time. He was on the bench in a sweatsuit for a handful of games. He's taking a leave of absence from St. Joseph's right now. Pretty short, pretty curt here. St. Joseph's put out a statement. The decision was made by Steve and his family and team administration. They're going to support him fully, and he's going to step away from the team at this moment. No timetable on his return as it relates to that. So St. Joseph's down a big guy. Dude showed some promise. He was very, very good in the Penn game when they beat him at the Palestra. So he's taking a leave right now. If he doesn't play the rest of the season, hopefully there's a situation where he can get a redshirt year. He can get this year back. But all the best to him with whatever is going on off the court. He takes care of it, and hopefully we can see him in a St. Joseph's uniform sooner rather than later. And with that, Kyle, conference play is underway for everybody. Let's get into it.
Let's do it. Yeah, no, hopefully all the best for Steve Solano first and foremost, of course. Yeah, I guess that's all I can really say about that right now. Hopefully all is good, and hopefully we see him in a Hawk uniform again soon. That would be very nice. All right. Conference play. Cope. We're gonna get back to our winners and losers here. We have finally, it feels like it's been a little bit since we've had consistent game action with every team playing multiple games a week. It's been a little bit. We're back to that now. We're in conference play. This is the heart of it. This is one of the best times of the year. So we're gonna go winners and losers. I'm gonna let you start us off here, and then I will piggyback off that and give my winners. But who is your winner or winners for this week in the Big Five?
So I'm going to do one team and then one player.
Okay.
My team is Temple. We'll get into them. Me and you were both there Friday night when they played Wichita State. Wichita State, they are 0-2, and they just lost last night against South Florida by 19 at the Roundhouse in their own place. So they're off to an 0-2 start. But coming into the year, everybody kind of had Wichita State slated as a team that could compete at the top and be a top 5, top 6 team in this league. So for the way the Temple battled, they were down early. This ended up being a game that really since the beginning, when I think Wichita was up like 11-2 to start, this was a 4 or 5 point game the entire way. And it was Temple at the very end that made the run, a 13-2 run late in the second half. Mashburn made some plays. Aiden Tobiasen had a deflection on a post-up that led to a basket. Zion Stanford, who it felt like couldn't really get a look at a shot all night, buried a big corner three. Steve Settle hit some shots. Quante Berry, very good again, and we'll get into that. But I'm going to go Temple as my big winner. To kick off conference play like that against a team that everybody figures to be at the top, really, really impressed with Temple up and down the lineup too. And they did it without Lynn Greer and without Jameel Brown as well. So we'll touch on more on Temple. But that was my big winner this week as a team. I thought that was a hell of a win. And quite frankly, Kyle, I think that was one of the best wins that Adam Fisher's had in his year plus on Broad Street. I do. I think that was one of the best wins that he had. And then next, I'm going to go with a player. And I'm going to go Jordan Longino. I was at the DePaul game Saturday. One of the worst beatdowns I've ever seen. 100-56. Villanova beating DePaul at the Finn on Saturday. One of the worst beatdowns I've ever seen. Villanova dominated this game in every single facet. Jordan Longino, 5 for 5 from 3 in that game. Had a career-high 19 points. And in the Butler game as well, that Villanova had to come back from in the second half. He made some key baskets late, and he had some big-time steals and some big-time turnovers late, which was big for them to come back in this game and really seal the deal for Villanova. So as he continues to kind of have to man the point a little bit, asked to score, he puts together a very, very good week. And if he can play like that, and I feel like the performances he's putting out, we're seeing the guy that Villanova envisioned. You saw flashes of it his freshman year because on a Final Four team, he didn't play in the tournament, unfortunately, due to an injury, but you saw a guy that was contributing as a freshman on a Final Four team. And he's been healthy this year. He spoke about how excited he was to have a healthy summer and be able to practice all throughout the offseason, and it's paying dividends. He's playing really, really well right now, being efficient, scoring, shooting the ball. Jordan Longino, for me, was a huge winner this week. I'll throw it to you for yours before I get into losers.
All right. Well, you hit on a little bit of what my winner. Actually, I'm gonna do a team and a player to kind of piggyback off what you're doing. But my team is gonna be the Villanova Wildcats this week. Um, New Year's Day, 73 to 65 win over Butler, where they were down a lot of the game, and then they ended the game, Cope, on a 22 to 1 run. That is absurd and unheard of, and awesome that they are on the good end of that because last year I feel like maybe not quite to that extreme all the time, but they were, I think, on the bad end of that. I think specifically at Butler last year too. I think they had a game like that, or
They
against
lost a,
Butler at least.
they lost a double overtime game in Hinkle that I believe they were up for most of that game. But
Yeah,
regardless, like your point, one score games left a lot to be desired at times.
they did. They did. And so this was maybe you can say, oh, they got lucky, they escaped with a victory. I look at it as this is a gutsy victory. This is a team that was dead in the water in this game. They came back, they pulled out a victory in a really tough place to play, an historic arena in Butler. And then, like you said, home against DePaul on Saturday, January 4th, 100 to 56, utter domination. And they've won 7 of the last 8 now, 8 of the last 10 if you go back to Penn and Maryland, where they lost to Maryland and obviously beat Penn by quite a few. I was at that game. But their only loss besides that since that Maryland game was at Creighton. And as we said on Spaces on Sunday, we know what happens when people travel to Omaha. I don't know what's in the water up there. I don't know what's in the air, but very hard place to play. Obviously, a good team too. Even without Pop Isaacs, they're still formidable, at least, to compete in the middle of the pack of the Big East. So, other than that, they have played really, really well lately, and I think pieces are finally starting to click offensively. I think their defensive effort's been better. Maybe they haven't played like the absolute best competition. Their best game in that stretch was Cincinnati, but they won that game at home. It was a tough test for them at the time, especially because they had a rough start to the season. So I'm a lot higher in Villanova than I was, let's say 6 weeks ago. This team's really turned it around, and I think that they can be in the top 4 or 5 at least of the Big East this season. And my player, Cope, to go back to your Temple points earlier, I'm going to go Quante Berry. Quante Berry has had a very solid last couple games. On the 29th, I know it wasn't this week, but the 29th against Buffalo, he was the MVP of that game, 15 points off the bench. And then Lynn Greer was out against Wichita State, so he stepped in the starting lineup, had 14 points of his own, has been efficient in both of those games, had 5 assists as well against Wichita State. So he's really been a stabilizing piece in the Temple backcourt. And we've talked about it all the time how talented that Temple backcourt is. Obviously, you have Mashburn, who will be their primary scorer, is their best player. But Greer missed a bunch of games earlier in the season with the suspension. He's come back, taking a little bit of time to get acclimated again, but they are going to appreciate his rebounding, his playmaking a little bit with his passing. Just another talented guy out there. But then Quante Berry steps in, and he's kind of like right now the third point guard of the team, but he's been playing really, really well. And like I said on Spaces on Sunday as well, they need that secondary scoring. And they've been getting it with Barry. They've been getting it with Steve Settle. They had 5 guys in double figures against Wichita State. So shout out to Quante Barry because I don't know if he's getting quite enough love, and I wanted to be the one to make sure that he did. So shout out to him for that. And Cope, I guess I'm going to have to start us off with some losers here. I think I'm only going to choose one loser. And even though they did win a game, I think I am going to go with St. Joe's. They did beat UMass on New Year's Eve, which obviously starting off conference play, you're not going to be mad at that. But the loss to St. Louis, it's a double-edged sword because tough place to play. I don't think they've won there since St. Louis has joined the A10. So there's that first and foremost. The St. Louis team is talented, top heavy, but talented. I think I picked them to be in the top 3 of the A10 going into the year, and they didn't get off to the best start. They dealt with some injuries, but it's a talented team. Regardless, St. Joe's is probably if that or above them a little bit talent level. I think they're a deeper team for sure. And this is a game you expected to be competitive all the way, if nothing else. And they were competitive for a few minutes. I think they cut it to 4 in the second half, but ended up losing 73 to 57. And it's just like at some point they have to consistently beat the teams that are just as good as them. They can play up to competition. We've seen it. They can play down to competition. We've seen it. And if they're going to do that in conference play, they need to be able to win the games that are against these higher quality opponents because then you're getting into the 500 and less records that we've seen over the last few years. And I don't think that's this team. I think this team is too good to have that happen. So it can be corrected in the coming week and the coming couple weeks. I mean, they have Loyola Chicago on Saturday, and I'm absolutely blanking on who they have on Wednesday.
Duquesne.
Duquesne, thank you. Who's been playing a lot better lately. So it's not going to be easy for them. I think if they win both of those games, and we talked about this on Sunday as well. Also, quick shout out, make sure you tune in to Twitter Space on Sunday with the two of us and Aaron Bracey because a lot of good info there. But I don't think this completely erases the St. Louis loss. If they win these two games, I definitely think it helps a lot. So there's work to be done. I don't think it's all negative, but if I had to pick a loser this week, I'm going to go with St. Joe's because that's a game that you would love to see. It's a tough game, I understand that, but that's a game you'd love to see them win. So they're going to be my loser this week, unfortunately. Cope, how about you?
Well, you stole mine because I was going to take the same thing. And
Yeah.
even though I was at the UMass game where they played well and they won a battle, the St. Louis game, the metrics aren't giving them as much love as I think as good as St. Louis is. They've taken some losses. They haven't been healthy. So as this team hopefully stays healthy, they get into conference play and round into form a little bit. They have a terrific X and O coach. Their half court stuff is awesome. Robbie Avila is awesome. When they can get their feet under them and play together, this can be a team that can get a double bye in the A10 tournament. So although you look at metrics and it's like, oh well, their record is this, they're ranked here. This is a good team. I don't consider this a bad loss by any means to have to travel to a place where they just haven't won. But this is going to be a good team at the end of the conference slate in the Atlantic 10 at St. Louis. The problem is they were playing behind the whole game. They got it close, and then they just sputtered to the finish line here in the last couple minutes and didn't really score last 6, 7 minutes of this game. So the way they lost is disappointing, but also if St. Joe's is, and I think they are, talent-wise, they're certainly a top 5 team in this league, certainly. But if they want to finish with a conference record better than 500 and they want to challenge for a double bye, you got to pick off some teams like this. You got to pick off a St. Louis at their place, a VCU at their place, and win those games and separate yourself a little bit because, excuse me, we know they should beat UMass. We know they should beat Duquesne on Wednesday, even though Duquesne really slaughtered Rhode Island in the A10 opener, and even after the record, the 5-8 start they had, they were really really good in that game. But they need to win the games that we think that they should. But you got to pick off some of these top teams as well because I've always said it with these guys all year and even last year. They are too talented and certainly have the talent to challenge these teams and beat them at their place. So that's what was disappointing to me was, yes, the result, but at the same time, they have the talent and the capabilities to beat some of these top teams. Hell, they competed with Dayton last year in the first half at Hagan Arena. So we'll see how the conference slate plays out for them. I don't think Loyola's as strong as anybody thought they would be to start the year. That's going to be a critical game for them Saturday. But these top teams, I want to see them knock one or two of them off, especially on the road. That's where you got to separate yourself. It's hard as hell to win in conference play, but especially to go to some of the top teams, they have the talent to do so. They have to do that, and that's what was disappointing about this one. It was a good opportunity for them. They got themselves back in it, just didn't put a full game together to win.
And that's what we hope to see sometime soon because, like we both been saying, this team is way too talented for them to be at around the 500 mark of this league. Obviously, it's a great league, and we love the A10, but you said it best. They have to pick off some of these teams if they're going to compete for a double bye. The good teams can beat beat who they're supposed to beat, and maybe they'll struggle against better teams, but the great teams can win games like these. So it was a challenge. Maybe they didn't live up to it. There will be other opportunities. It's still early in conference play, but it's gonna start going pretty quickly here. So hopefully they can get some more matchups like that as well. All right, quick updates for the other games that we didn't go over before we get into the schedules, just so we touch on them so you know what happened in case you don't know. Dayton came to Glacier Arena on New Year's Eve, beat LaSalle
They went there.
84-70.
LaSalle went there.
LaSalle went there?
Yeah, LaSalle went there.
I am so sorry. That happens sometimes. Campbell beat Drexel 57-54 on January 2nd. And they also beat North Carolina A&T 68-59 on Saturday. And of course, Cope, real quick, because I do want to go over this too, because you were at this game. Not a Big Five game, but at a Big Five venue on Sunday. Indiana, Penn State, Big Ten game. I know this is the second year in a row that Penn State's hosted a Big Ten team at the Palestra. Indiana won 77-71. Wasn't a crazy competitive game for a chunk of it, although Penn State did come back and made it competitive. But real quick, before we get into the schedule for this upcoming week, talk about that game because it seemed like the atmosphere was better than games that we've experienced together there, at least in the college ranks. Obviously, the Catholic League Championship's otherworldly. But talk about this game because I know we debated about it on Spaces, but it's really exciting to see a Big Ten team play there.
Yeah, I love that Penn State wants to take advantage of that. They get to play in Philadelphia. They get to showcase the Palestra. Hell, you probably have a lot of Penn Staters in the area, Kyle, that grew up going to games there. So it's a novelty once a year thing that they do where the fan base comes out. It's a whiteout. They have pom poms and streamers when you walk in. They really dress it up and make an event out of it, which is cool. And the atmosphere was great. Corners were full. And that when that place is rocking, there's no other place that's like it. Of course, being my favorite place to watch college hoops. But it was a competitive game down the stretch. The crowd got back into it. Indiana came out right off the bat, quick run, right out of halftime, got a 16-point cushion at one point, and then Penn State battled back. This was a really close game. Zach Hicks knocked down a big three, not his greatest game, but Old Temple, an Old Temple out knocked down a big shot there. Crowd was into it. It's really cool. And I think what the other cool part about it is they have not only Zach Hicks from Camden, but they have Kachi Enze, who's from the area as well, who transferred in from Xavier. So Penn State wants to recruit Philadelphia. And then when they bring those guys on the team, they give them the chance to play there. They give them the chance to play at Wells Fargo like they did against Drexel. So it's, as Mike Rhodes said, like, in every aspect of recruiting this area, like this game is awesome. Hopefully it attracts people to come play for us. We can put on our play style in the Palestra. So it's a great recruiting chip for Penn State. And I wish the Big Five teams would take a bit more advantage of that if they played one, even if it was a non-conference game a year. I know Aaron Bracey on Spaces had an idea, hey, like Memphis Temple at the Palestra would be great. And it would be. That would be awesome to have probably not probably, you have the biggest brand in your conference, play at the Palestra. This year, they're very good. They're ranked. Last year, they were ranked for a good chunk of the year. The problem is Temple probably doesn't want to give up that gate. And I think there's a lot of Big Five schools and a lot of college basketball programs, hell, sports programs that wouldn't give up on that gate when there's a big-time opponent coming to town. So hopefully there's a remedy for this somewhere that the Big Five teams can take advantage of the Palestra, play a game there. And I think people want to play there. I said that on Spaces. I think this is a place where coaches want to come to and players want to play at when they realize how cool the building is and the history of the place. It's a place that people want to be. And I think if they tried to set up a non-conference game where you could sell somebody on the prospect of the Palestra that maybe you're not used to seeing, I think that could be something that could put a good resume game on a Temple schedule, on a LaSalle schedule. Something like that. So it was great to be there because when you're there for the Catholic League, you're there for a game like this and the place is rocking, which you don't always see. There's really nothing that's like that. So credit to Penn State. This is actually the third straight year they've done it. They've done it the 2 years that Mike Rhodes has been there. They've done it the last year that Micah Shrewsbury was there. They played Purdue there when they were ranked number 1 and had Edie. So love that Penn State does this and hopefully more Big Five teams can continue to not continue. Hopefully they can start taking advantage of that. Not to take anything away from St. Joe's, but it was the Gazelle Group and the Holiday Hoop Fest that set up their game against Virginia Tech. But I'd like to see some Big Five teams take advantage of that. And hopefully you create a really good atmosphere for a game that if you sell it as a whiteout like Penn State did or something like that, you can create quite the home court advantage for yourself, even if it's not your designated home gym. So great to be there as always. I don't care if the place is empty. I always love being at the Palestra, but really special when you get to see it filled up like that.
Yeah, and back to your point about Big Five teams playing there, it just makes way too much sense. I mean, and again, we talked about it on Spaces, so if you want to listen to our first discussion on that, go back to Aaron Bracey's Twitter at Aaron_Bracey, and you can check that out. I'll touch a little bit on some of the points that I made there, but it just makes too much sense. If you want to, I think part of the reason the Big Five Classic and adding Drexel and going to the Wells Fargo and all those things came to fruition was there was an onus to help bring back the energy of the Big Five. It had obviously, I don't, we're not going to sugarcoat it. It had lacked in recent years. I think Villanova's dominance probably helped with that because just it wasn't as competitive. They were winning the Big Five or sharing the Big Five title almost every year. Um, this would be something to help bring that back because people know about the Palestra and they love the Palestra, but they're not only going to go there for Penn games. That's the reality of it. And like I said, we're not going to sugarcoat that, but there's so much history. You don't have the Big Five without the Palestra. And I understand we're not going to have the Big Five Classic there, much to our chagrin, especially yours, Cope. But obviously, the Wells Fargo makes sense. It's the NBA arena. You're going to sell a lot more seats. It's more recognizable to casuals. That makes sense, and that's all good and well. And I don't think it's worth arguing that point anymore. But point being that there should still be some Big Five games there that are not just Penn games. It just makes too much sense, and you need to be able to show off the history and get a new generation of fans in because all of the people who talk about Big Five basketball mostly are people from an older generation than us. And I'm glad that we recognize the importance of the Big Five. Obviously, that's why we started this podcast. And I think there are people our age who also do that too, and credit to them. And hopefully they can keep spreading the message that the Big Five is important in the city of Philadelphia, but not everybody knows that. I don't even know if just casual fans. I feel like there are maybe some seasoned college basketball fans who just aren't aware of the tradition if they're of the newer generation. So I think it's just important. And maybe that's something we can try to do, us and Aaron. We can try to get on the Big Five schools and try to figure it out and see what we can do. But it's something that should happen. At least one team. Maybe it's not realistic for every single team to have a home game there. There are six of them after all. But maybe we can get one or two that are not Penn that can also host games there that aren't part of the Gazelle Group or Holiday Classic. So Holiday Hoops Fest, excuse me. But that's just me. I think it's a good thing. I think a lot of you listening will agree. But we could spend all day on that. We're going to move on because, Cope, we have a very, very, very exciting week ahead in the Big Five. There's a lot of great matchups going on. Why don't you give me two of them that you are very much looking forward to, and then I'll do the same afterward.
Well, I'm going to steal both Villanova games because they're the two
I
big
figured.
games of the week. So they have the two-time defending champ UConn Huskies coming to campus for the first time since the 90s with fans because they came to the Finn. Usually it's a Wells Fargo Center game. They came to the Finn during the COVID years. So there was no fans there. So this is a game that there was already going to be a lot of excitement about, but especially exacerbated by the fact that this is not a team that always comes to the Finn to play. They also just happen to be the two-time defending champs. The only three games this team has lost were in Maui. They've ripped off a bunch straight, beating Baylor, beating Texas, beating Gonzaga. They're hot. Villanova's hot, winning 8 of their last 9. This is a massive, massive spot for Villanova to grab a signature win. How about a signature win for Kyle Neptune? I know he beat North Carolina in the battle for Atlantis, who got a number 1 seed in the tournament last year. But you're at home. You're playing as good as basketball as honestly they've done in the Kyle Neptune era, Kyle.
Yep.
And this UConn team, I mean, it really goes without saying for most of this how good they are. We know how good Danny Hurley is. You know about their knowns with how good Alex Caravan has been. He continues to take another step, is blocking shots. He's still knocking down big-time threes. Just a winning player. But the centers on this team, Klingen's out. How are you going to replace him? They have the bouncy, athletic Samson Johnson who's been blocking shots. But how about the Michigan transfer, Taris Reed? Terrific rebounder, He's top 40 in block rate in the country, so he's been able to anchor the middle. Look, you're not going to replace Donovan Clingan easy, but Connecticut has done a pretty damn good job of that with their tandem at the center spot. And then you look at the guards. Aid Mahaney comes in from St. Mary's. That guy was supposed to be the answer. Not that he's not playing well. He was big in the win against Providence that UConn just had. But Hassan Diarra, who has really been a reserve the last 2 years for them on the championship teams, brings really good minutes, is a really good scorer off the bench. He's assumed the point guard role now. And he's been awesome as a table setter. Guy can score a little bit as well. But losing Tristan Newton, just as they did Clingan, needed a replacement for that. They went out and got Aid Mahaney. It turns out that replacement's already on their team in Hassan Diarra. So he's been great in leading the offense. We have to point out that Liam McNeely's not going to play in this game. They're star freshman. Really good athlete, really good shooter, played really well. The game that they played at the Garden against Gonzaga, he was dynamite. He's out for this game. Only elevates how big of a spot this is for Nova to grab a win without a starting player in UConn's lineup. Another guy I want to talk about, Solo Ball. This guy's been a really good three-point shooter and
All
a
name
really
team,
good
by the way.
scorer. Yeah, great name. Great name. But you look up and down the lineup and they're terrific once again. They're very, very well coached. They still have some returners that are taking on another role. Offensively, this team is a juggernaut. Like you have two of the best offenses in the country going at each other. However, this UConn team is not a good three-point defensive team, which I think could be the difference. Defense is going to decide this game because we know what these teams are capable of offensively. Defense is going to win this game. And it could be the perfect storm for Villanova to, yes, you want to penetrate and you want to kick out for threes, but there's a hard team to score at the rim on in UConn. And if Villanova, in a charged up Finneran Pavilion, to a team that has let people score points from the three-point line on them, we could be in the making for a big-time upset here and a really, really good win for Villanova, as good of a win as they've had in years, Kyle. So that's number one. Number two with Villanova, what a gauntlet they're gonna have after they played some bottom-tier teams in the Big East. Saturday, I'm going to try to go up for this game, potentially snow permitting. They're going to the Garden. They're going to the world's most famous arena. And who are they going to play? They're going to play Rick Pitino and the Johnnies of St. John's. This team, Kyle, they've lost 3 games this year by a combined 5 points. They lost at the buzzer to Baylor on the Jeremy Roach damn near half-court pull-up 3. They lost to Georgia in the Bahamas by 3, and then they went to Creighton, and of course, they lose a close one, and Creighton finds a way to pull it out, and they lose that game by 1. This team is a handful of points away from being 15-0, and at that point, probably a top 5 team in the country, Kyle. If you have wins over Baylor, Georgia's going to be a good team, I think, and fight for the tournament. Creighton. So this team is the real deal. Defensively, they have been awesome. Bringing in Kadari Richmond from Seton Hall, a big point guard at 6'6". Can't shoot, but defensively is terrific, has had his moments. Offensively, they bring in Davon Smith from Utah, another pit bull defender who can score a little bit. But I think a big matchup in this game is Eric Dixon and Enoch Boakye, who's been rebounding at a very high rate, going up against Zuby Ejiofor of St. John's, because Joel Soriano was a walking double-double. Led D1 in double-doubles one of his last years he was at St. John's. He leaves. They're like, okay, well, where's the offense got to come from? And again, just like UConn having some players on the team that they didn't need replacements for, Zuby Ejiofor was right there. He's broken out and been one of the most improved players in the Big East. He's dominant on the boards. He's blocking shots. He's a huge presence inside. So 2 really, really tough games. Honestly, these are as tough a games as you're going to play in the Big East, having to go to the Garden and play St. John's, where St. John's really worked Villanova last year and beat them pretty good. And then, of course, having to play UConn. But 2 of the best coaches in the game, quite frankly, Kyle, sans a couple very close losses. I still think St. John's is one of the best teams in the country. 2 good coaches, 2 good teams. Terrific players all around, 1 really good offensive, 1 really good defensive. It's going to be quite the challenge for Villanova, but I can't look at this slate and pick 2 other ones. I know it's the same team, but these are 2 big-time games and 2 big-time coaches they're going to play against. So I won't be at Villanova tomorrow night. I'm hoping to be at the Garden on Saturday for what should be a really good game. But this is where we're going to find out a lot about Villanova. They're playing their best basketball. They look terrific right now offensively. Let's see how they do against the big boys of the Big East.
Let's see indeed, Cope. You said it best. This is going to be a huge test for them. Two of the best three teams in the Big East. I think Marquette right now is the best team in the Big East, but these are the next two. So this is going to be a tough matchup. Hopefully you can get up to the Garden. Hopefully the snow stays away so you can get up there and go to that one. But yeah, tough matchups here for Villanova. I want to go to the same team again. I'm not going to, but I will note before I get into it that LaSalle hosting Loyola Chicago tomorrow, which I will be at. It's an honorable mention because I am intrigued by this game. I think LaSalle can win this game. Loyola has been not so great lately, but I'm going to save that because I'm going to pick two games on Saturday that are going to involve our two Atlantic 10 teams. One of them will be Loyola Chicago on the second leg of the Philadelphia road trip, traveling to Hagan Arena to take on St. Joe's. I think this is a game St. Joe's should win, and I say that because Loyola has it's had it rough the last few games. They started off 9-1, pretty good. Not a great schedule. Their best win against Princeton on the road, which was a very good win, and then home against South Florida by 2 points. And you mentioned earlier what they just did to Wichita State, who's a decent team in their own right. However, they have lost four straight and five of their last six. So not great. One of those being to Oakland, who is Charleston, close 9 point loss. They were neutral floor against Murray State, which was a 3 point loss, and then home against VCU, a 19 point loss to kick off A10 play. So team's probably gonna be a little pissed off they're not playing well. Probably some motivation. We'll see what happens with the Wednesday game against LaSalle. They also are a little bit banged up, as we mentioned on Spaces. Justin Moore, the Drexel transfer, is out for the year. Cope, right?
Mhm.
So going to be tough sledding for them to replace their point guard, but I think this will be a competitive game. I do think St. Joe should win. I expect them to win. I think they're the more talented team, probably the deeper team, especially now with the injury problems for Loyola. So while I don't think it'll be easy because this team was projected to be among those elite teams in the A10 coming into the year, maybe not quite on the VCU Dayton level, but in that next tier, kind of along the lines of St. Joe's and St. Louis as well, has not quite, you know, been that so far for them. Although they did have a really good start, like I mentioned, they started off 8-0. But uh, I think this is a game that St. Joe's can and should win, but it will be competitive, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. But our other A10 matchup, which I'm very intrigued by, although I don't know exactly how it'll go, but LaSalle will be traveling up to Olean, New York to take on St. Bonaventure, who cope they were not expected to be among those upper echelon of teams. Maybe in the middle of the pack. Obviously, Mark Schmidt is a phenomenal coach, and I don't think, kind of like what we were talking about with Fran Dunphy for the longest time, though maybe not to quite the same extent right now, because I think people expected Bonaventure to be better than LaSalle was going into this year and still are, but he's not going to let them finish toward the bottom of the A10 at all, or even in the middle. He's got them humming right now. They are 67th in KenPom with a record of 14-1, nation's fourth longest win streak at 8 games in a row. Their only loss, Cope, being to Utah State on a neutral floor, 72-67. And if you all are not familiar with Utah State, which you should be because the Mountain West, as we both know, very good conference. We love the Mountain West. But they're a nationally ranked team now. The 25th came out in the AP poll this week. And you can talk how you want about the AP poll. I personally don't think it's what it used to be. There are many other metrics that can help determine a team and how good they are. They're 45th in KenPom though, so that should tell you they're a solid team. They're going to be up there in tournament contention if they don't win the Mountain West, which they very well might. Uh, Other than that, they are unblemished, and they haven't played crazy amount of great teams either. Northern Iowa, oh, it was a good win for them. VCU at home to kick off A10 play, obviously a great win for them because that's one of the teams that are above them right now in an A10 play. And then neutral floor against Providence, they won 74-70. And Providence is okay, but still, Big East team. This team's good, and as we all know, traveling up to Olean, New York is not an easy task, and it's hard enough to win in conference play on the road anyway. This is one of the toughest in the A10. Arguably among the toughest in the country just in terms of conference road trips. This is not an easy place to play. I know you've been up there or near there, I think, but it's in the middle of nowhere. I don't even know if I could point out Ole in New York on a map. I know it's above PA somewhere, about a 6 hour drive, 7 hour drive, I think, from here in Philly. But this is not going to be easy. I don't think they will win this game, but I think this is going to be a really good test for them, and I would like to see them at least be very competitive. I don't even think a little bit competitive is going to cut it for me to be impressed by this. I'm not a huge moral victory guy. Results matter more. But in terms of a young team and a team that has a few transfers, and obviously now we're halfway through the season, so it's not quite as relevant. But Deuce Jones is a young guy who, this is something who can be part of his development. Um, this is just, they have a lot of new guys in this team who have not experienced this kind of road trip. So it's going to be a really good test for them. And it's early in conference play. I think if they respond well to this, I'll be a little bit more excited for their prospects for the rest of conference play. But I'm really, really excited for this game because I think, and we've said it before, LaSalle, they might not have the best record in the A10. They might not have a top half record in the A10, but I think they're going to compete in a lot of games this year. They might not be able to close all of them. They might not be able to close half of them, but I do think they're going to be very, very competitive. And I think this team's better than what we thought coming into the year. We've said that a bunch. I think this is going to be a really, really good test for them. So I'm also very excited for this game as well, Cope. I know you are too. It should be an excellent one. Now, for the other games, just so you guys are not missing anything, like I mentioned, Loyola Chicago at LaSalle, 6:30 on Wednesday. Also on that day, St. Joe's at Duquesne at 7, Temple at East Carolina at 7. Thursday, Drexel at Stony Brook. And then, of course, on Saturday as well, Towson at Drexel, which I was also considering for one of my games this week. That's going to be a great one. Towson, pretty good team in the CAA, so I think that'll be a good matchup for them. Penn at Dartmouth at 2, Temple at Rice at 2, Battle of the Owls there. And then we obviously mentioned Loyola Chicago at St. Joe's at 3. That's on CBS Sports. And then Villanova at St. John's, prime time at the Garden, 7 p.m. to wrap up our Big Five week. And that's going to be exciting as well. So, Cope, obviously went over a lot, right in the thick of conference play now. Final thoughts here for you before we sign off and let the games begin.
I can't help but like look at the calendar. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but that calendar turns to January 1st and all you can think about is March, and you can almost taste it at this
I was
point,
going to
Kyle.
say, you
Feels
thinking
like it's
about March?
forever away, but we are not very far off at all. So we're right in the thick of it now, phase two of the season. Smorgasbord of games on Saturday. So if it's snowing, you don't need to go out. You don't need to do anything. Maybe you order some DoorDash, chill on the couch, post up there for a couple hours, and you're going to be covered the whole day with some Big Five hoops. So stay safe out there if it snows. It has not been fun going to work in that or walking in that. It's freezing outside. There's snow on the ground. Not fun once you get a little older, I guess. Not that we're old by any means, Kyle, but when you don't get a snow day, you still got to go into work, got to shovel the driveway now, you got to start the car early, you got to scrape the ice off the car. It's not very fun. But post up Saturday, watch some Big Five hoops. And
Why
of
not?
course, Kyle, we got to give ourselves a plug just about every Sunday, really at the same time, kind of depending on the Eagles' schedule, but they do play an earlier game at 4:30, so it should be wrapped up by then. Of course, our Twitter Spaces, me, Kyle, of course, the great Aaron Bracey who puts it all together for us. 8 to 9 every single Sunday. Come hop in, offer your thoughts on the game, propose some questions to us, hop in on the conversation by all means. Don't just listen to us yet. Definitely give us your thoughts as well. But yeah, need to put a plug in for the spaces. We've been getting some good traction on it. A lot of people have been listening to the recording. So hopefully anybody listening out there will do the same and join us Sunday night. Hopefully after an Eagles win, and hopefully, Kyle, after a monumental Broncos win.
I'm rooting for both of those things. Although I wouldn't mind Josh Allen getting his shot at a Super Bowl, even though he's in our division. I like Josh Allen. I can't be mad at that. But for your sake, Cope, I will root for the Broncos. It'll pain me a little bit, but either team winning is just eh. Of course, now that the Jets are out, I will turn a little bit of my attention to the Eagles just because that's what I've had to do for the majority of the last 14 years because I don't know what else to do. I need something to latch on to. So the Eagles, and I hope the Lions win too. I'm always going to have a little soft spot for the Lions as well. But yes, Cope, thank you for the plug for the spaces. I was going to do the same thing, but please make sure you guys tune into our spaces on Sunday night, 8 p.m. We've been having some great discussions. We've been getting some great interactions, as Cope mentioned. So make sure you check that out. It'll be at Aaron_Bracey. His Twitter, obviously, you guys know Aaron Bracey has been on here a bunch of times, but it'll be on his Twitter, and we'll be in it as well, of course. But definitely check that out. And of course, if you want to keep checking out more of our stuff, make sure you like subscribe to Big Five Pod on YouTube. Make sure you check out our audio only versions on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And of course, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Big Five Pod. Cope, I wish I could keep talking, but I am almost out of breath. So thank you all for tuning in very much. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next week.